luxury is in the details. So it's not enough to do a swan napkin or whatever it is people do. The quality of the chairs, the quality of the this, of the that, of the other, because you're trying to give people an experience. And sometimes people will tell me, oh, our chef is amazing. And you taste the food and it's like, I'm so sorry, it's mediocre, you know? So even if you have mediocre food and you can't afford to fire the chef, another thing you can do is branding. So for example, the rest of the food in the courses can be mediocre, but the last course, the dessert, which is the one that people photograph the most, make sure you invest in the dessert because that's the last impression of the meal that people are going to have.
What is going on, everyone? Jonathan here with the Venue RX. And if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know we like to keep the topics very interesting, a lot of variety here. And we're going to be talking to someone today who's in the luxury space. And I know this is a space that a lot of us are very interested in getting into, whether you own a venue, operate a venue, you're looking to start a venue, or maybe you're in another portion of our industry. The attention is definitely on the luxury space, primarily because of the, all of the incredible budgets that drive the incredible inspiration around the creativity and the decor and all of it that goes together. And so we're going to be talking luxury today, which we haven't done on this podcast really before. And I'm excited to welcome to the show, Elizabeth Solaru. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for having me on your show. And I'm really excited for our conversation.
I am as well. I realize I also messed up the last name. I want the record to stand, Solaru, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. People need to know this. It's important. So you have an incredible story, though, because as I was doing research and kind of learning a little bit more about you prior to coming on the podcast, you made a shift into the education space after really having an incredible career actually in the industry. Could you tell us a little bit about where this all started for you and how you got into the wedding and events industry?
Yeah. After university, so I did my degree and then I went for a master's straight away. I did microbiology as my degree and then medical microbiology and parasitology for my master's. I know, mouthful. And then I went off and trained as a biomedical scientist in microbiology. And I was very happy. The aim was to maybe eventually do a PhD, do research, etc. And I actually kind of started on that path. And then I remember sitting in the lab one day thinking, oh my God, there's got to be more to life than being a lab rat. I do not want to die without seeing the world. And I had a vague idea of doing something in business. So I did what I'm used to doing, which was going off and doing another degree. So I got an MBA. And looking back now, I should have taken that money and just set up my business, but never mind. So I did an MBA and halfway through the MBA, I kind of realized, oh my God, I am not going to get a job in business because my background is all science and people can't make the leap between science and business. So what do I do? So I started badgering my business school and they said, you know what? We're going to make you head of MBA careers, but there's no money, no budget for you. And we'll give you an email address and half an office and that's it. And then that was when I realized I had to network like mad. So I networked like crazy, reached out to so many headhunters, so many alumni, so many CEOs, etc. And I organized these evenings at the business school. So I bring them in and they talk to the students. However, what I didn't realize was that I was being watched as well. And then I got a tap on the shoulder. There was a guy who said, look, I'm setting up my own headhunting firm. Would you like to join me? So, of course, he didn't have to ask me twice. So I, hot-footed it there. And the irony was that I was interviewing really senior level public figure type candidates. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my God, I've never run a lemonade stand. And here I am interviewing these multi-million-pound budget wielding individuals. But what it did teach me was a lot about human psychology. It taught me a lot about seeing behind the bullshit and excuse my French. And, because a lot of powerful people are really good speakers, really good talkers. So getting behind all that and also knowing what their weaknesses really were, not just what they told you. So I did that for a while. I tried to set myself apart from colleagues because I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any money and I didn't go to the same schools as them. So that meant I had to establish my own network. So again, just started networking like mad, joined the Association of MBAs. I joined their events committee and we were holding events for the London chapter. So I got to meet a shed load of people. And anyway, doing my headhunting job, minded my business. And then 2008, we know what happened. The market tanked. So I lost my job. And then I thought, okay, 2008, milestone birthday. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And I decided to set up a cake company. And then I realized I need clients. What do I do? So I did what I was trained to do as a headhunter, which was take the yellow pages and called every event planner in the book. And of course, most of them were like, go away. We don't want to know you. Some were downright rude. Some were polite. And then I called one particular day, I think a Wednesday afternoon, I called one number and a very young voice at the end said, do you make cupcakes? And I'm like, of course we make cupcakes. I will bring you some samples in the next 3 days. So I ran around, got a amazing packaging, did the cupcakes and then dropped them off and then ran out. I remember running out of the office because I thought, I don't want to hang around just in case they hate me. And before I got home, I got a call saying, Lady Elizabeth would like to see you. And in my head, I'm thinking, who on earth is Lady Elizabeth? So anyway, I went back and it happened that Lady Elizabeth Anson is the cousin to the late Queen Elizabeth. And she was the first official event planner in the UK. And she said, love your cakes. I am ordering 250 for an event I have. And that was how I got my very first luxury client. And that was how everything just came together. Well, that was a start. Let's put it that way.
Well, I was going to say, your story is so inspiring because depending on how you look at it, it could sound like it was an overnight success. You got this incredible client, but what I'm hearing is you did a lot of work to get up to that point.
I did a lot of work. I mean, calling those yellow pages. And then what I was doing in parallel to sustain me was that I had one of the drivers that I used for my cake deliveries in those days, because in the UK we had, in those days, this was before Uber, so we had something called mini cab offices. So he said, oh, I work for a mini cab office and we leaflet. And I'm like, what do you mean you leaflet? So essentially they distribute pamphlets to different houses in many postcodes around where I lived. And I said, I have an idea. If I gave your office some leaflets, would you only leaflet the really nice addresses, the very posh ones? And he said, sure. And I said, how much? He said, £10. And I gave him the £10. And I could always tell when they'd leafleted because I'd get at least 3 phone calls saying, can I order a birthday cake? So that to me was brilliant. So it meant that actually I didn't realize what I was doing was targeted marketing at that time, but, paying someone to just leaflet and getting business from that. So I was doing things like that alongside the calling. I was also doing a couple of other things as well, like going to really, really fancy areas and putting notices because we had these corner shops. So I would put a really nice notice saying cake maker, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get much luck from that, but at least people recognized that, oh, there's a cake maker, blah, blah, blah. So I did a couple of other things which were tactical, not particularly strategic, but they were very tactical.
I really appreciate you bringing this up because I think from an outsider perspective, success, or whether it's starting a business or whatever, is a very kind of linear equation, X plus Y equals, and it's this, we kind of see people's lives or their successes in a timeline like that. but you were doing all of these things in parallel without necessarily knowing at the time which one was going to be the successful. Like it could have been one of the leaflets or it could have been something else. You weren't leaving that to chance though. You were going to put in the work. And I think that's really important for anyone out there who's starting something new or you have a dream. You can't just say, my dream is going to work out exactly in this straight line way. You need to have your dream and pursue your dream, but then you need to have a couple of different ways that you're tactically, to use the word you just used, getting there. Thank you for highlighting that. I really appreciate that. The cakes, I have to ask, where did that come from? Was it just was baking? Because there's a culinary piece there.
Yeah. So a little part of the story, when I was about 9 or 10 or something, a friend of mine gave me a cookbook in school. And I remember looking, thinking, I don't even know why she gave me the cookbook because I know it wasn't my birthday, but she just gave it to me. And I looked and I thought, oh, these ingredients are so simple. Surely cakes are a lot more complicated than this. So I took the book home and I took out my mother's old cooking pots. Now, anyone who has been brought up in an African household knows that, especially my particular African household, the oven was literally used as storage. We never baked or anything like that. Maybe once a year, the Christmas turkey or something. So my mom had these old pots, which I just retrieved and I started using them to bake. And then I'd make observations. Okay, this pot made everything burn on the outside, but it wasn't cooked on the inside. This pot gave me a nice even bake. So I started experimenting. And at some point, I remember my mom saying, oh my God, you're using up all my gas. Stop it. But then she wasn't that bothered really. So I started at that age, but then I got to an age where I couldn't very well tell my parents, okay, I want to go to culinary school because there are only 2 professions to an African household. That's medicine or law. And anything other than that is like total and utter shame, disgrace, and failure. So I just had to, okay, science, I'm good at science. I will go off and I actually got admission for medicine, but my mathematics wasn't that great. So I thought, you know what, I'll do microbiology instead. So that really was it. So I'd always baked as a child. And then when I started working as a headhunter, because of stress, I started baking again. And my colleagues would say, oh my God, this tastes amazing. This is lovely, blah, blah, blah. But then I'd always buy Martha Stewart magazines. I mean, I owe the woman my life. Martha Stewart magazines. And through her magazines, I discovered, because she'd feature cakes, she'd feature weddings. And I discovered two particular American cake makers, Colette Peters and Ron Ben Israel. And they were like my gods. And I remember Colette had a book out and I had to go to a bookstore, Foyles, London, to order the book. And I think the book took a couple of months to arrive. And for me, that day was Christmas, the day I collected that book. And then Ron Ben Israel, I discovered online. And I remember writing and badgering him to start doing classes. And when he started classes, it wasn't in New York, because although he's based in New York, he started his classes in Savannah, Georgia. And I remember traveling all the way from the UK to Savannah, Georgia. Anything he said, and he was like, he's a good friend now, but he was like, oh my God. So, and another thing I did was I would save up my headhunting money and come for cake camp in America, because again, America, come for cake camp. And it was like, for me, it was bliss. To me, that was the best holiday ever, because I got to talk cake with people. I learned so many different techniques and I met all these wonderful cake people. So that was where all that training came about, trained a lot, and then the design aspects as well. And as I said to a couple of people, when you start out as an artist, you copy first, and then over time, you then begin to have an idea of who you are as an artist and develop your own style. So yeah, that's how it all started.
I love this. And we haven't even got to the other part of this whole thing, which is your book that just recently came out, right?
Yeah.
So you have this passion for baking. you parlay it into this incredible brand. I mean, and we're going to have the links to everything, in the show notes. So please, if you're listening or watching this, check this out. I mean, the cakes here, they'll make you hungry in an instant, but then it'll also be something that you want to frame and put on your wall. I mean, these are gorgeous photos. I'm curious. So you make the shift from the really a science world, microbiology, to the business world with the MBA stuff and headhunting, and then you shift to a more creative space, but still in business. You hustle and really work really hard, and then finally get this contract. Tell me, kind of, was that contract a turning point for you in terms of the cake business?
It kind of was. That was a milestone moment, but there were other milestone moments as well. But that one in particular was a milestone moment because if the story had ended there, that would have been amazing enough. But what Lady Elizabeth then did, and this was like one of the best acts of kindness ever, she decided off her own back to write me a testimonial. And she said, you can use this testimonial on all your marketing materials. So she gave me permission, because usually clients of that type, they're very private, very confidential, and her name is very precious to her. So being able to have that, I mean, I put that everywhere. I was shameless. When I went for wedding shows, it was all over my banners, it was everywhere. So that was very, very gracious of her. And she didn't have to do that at all. So that was a turning point. Another turning point was probably seeing my case in print. So seeing my case in Brides magazine, that was like, you think, oh my God, I've made it. Although, still not many clients, but it was having that kind of exposure, Brides magazine, Martha Stewart, etc., and your case being featured amongst the best of the best, especially as I'm from a tiny island in, UK, where we're a small island. So that was a massive, massive turning point. So everything kind of like together. And of course, to get the case in those magazines, I remember I had to take part in so many style shoots, whether suitable, whether unsuitable, being let down by the photo sometimes, being let down by the organizer and everything that came with it, as well as alongside looking after clients as well. Then I had to think, okay, how do I differentiate myself? And another massive turning point was there was a year and there was a particular color it was a purple thing. I can't remember what the color was. And Pantone, they bring out a color every year. And it so happened that I'd created a cake, and that cake was used by Preston Bailey in his mood board. So everyone started congratulating, oh my God, he's featured you. So that was another moment. But another powerful moment, I think one of the most impactful, was when I took my cakes to a wedding show and somebody came to film, and my cakes ended up being filmed, although it wasn't planned at all. So he filmed the cakes, he filmed me, and the next thing I know, I'm on TV, wedding TV, because wedding TV was huge in those days. I was on wedding TV. And then from that, he decided to create a show around wedding cakes. And I sent him a list of all the people he should ask, because obviously I'm just a part-time baker. And he said, no, I want a mixed ability group. So you're going to be one of them. And on the morning of the recording, I remember saying to the driver, I hope I win just one of the challenges. If I could win one, I mean, how incredible would that be? And then when the driver came back to collect me, he said to me, right from the gates, people were talking about me, saying, oh my God, she won her chat, she won everything. I won 3 out of 3. So that was another claim to fame. So in the cake community, my name kind of blew up, and so those were some of the moments. And I do acknowledge, I give props to all those people in my book, Luxpreneur, because without them, I definitely would not have had all the journey, the success, or even the journey that I have today.
The thing that I'm hearing out of all this when you're talking, because I hear the accomplishments, but I see you also putting yourself in the room. And I think that's so important. I think that it's hard to imagine the level of hustle and the level of intention and the level of work that it takes to, like you said, being let down by all of the different planners and the photographers and things not working out. You had to do it so many times that didn't work out. And sprinkled in there were those amazing times that really propelled you to the stages that you were on and to the publications that you were in and things like that. So I think that in terms of a takeaway, like that's what I'm taking away, like show up. You know, if you're listening to this right now, like show up, get in the room, pick up the phone, right? Because if you hadn't picked up the phone, if you hadn't done the leaflets, you know, if you hadn't driven to the audition, if you hadn't got, like all of these different things, you're giving yourself the opportunity to be lucky. you know?
And so there's a huge part, which is rejection, because rejection is disgusting. It's horrible. It's disgusting. Nobody likes dealing with rejection, but rejection is part of, I mean, for all the successful stories that I tell you, as you said, they're sprinkled in you know, and for you, excuse my using a cake pun, the bulk of the cake of my business is failure after failure, really. And I don't shy away from that. And it's failure in terms of, okay, people not responding or people just ignoring or people thinking, who is she? So there's a lot of failure, a lot of rejection, but luckily it helps you be resilient. So for me, I use that as my balm of resilience, because without all that rejection, you don't develop the resilience muscle. So it's, you know, it's the weights. And yes, we, you know, go to the gym, we do weights and we develop that muscle. And we know that, okay, yes, you've been rejected, but keep going. You know, one rejection to even 100 rejections doesn't mean you'll never get to your destination. So it's about just keep going if you can.
And after the rejections as well, and when you do make it, when you do reach that success piece that you're pursuing, now all of a sudden when you look back, you can have the humility to acknowledge, like you've said so many times here on this podcast, like these people helped me. These people helped me. It was, you know, the kudos and the credit, and it gives you the layer of humility and then also giving back. And I think something like writing a book really helps. So I want to talk about the book and what you're doing now, because, you know, you, as we were kind of chatting before we got on here, you made a bit of a pivot in what you're doing. And have you fully shifted away from the cakes? I know still everything is out online, but tell me about kind of where you're at now and then what was the inspiration behind the book?
Well, the cakes, my first love. I'll always do cakes. It might be reduced, but I'll always do cakes. So I still have the cake business and I'm still taking orders. But what happened was COVID. Everyone, the P word, we all pivoted. And I was up because even while I was doing the cakes and hustling, and I was always asked to come and speak and encourage people or coach people or whatever for free. So I was doing all this speaking. I was trying to, as I was making sense of the luxury industry, I was also trying to help people make sense of it, help them get clients, etc. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I was asked to speak on many more stages. And I was talking about, they would give me difficult topics like luxury clients or how to charge what you're worth or whatever. So I did all that speaking. And then I realized that actually there's a massive gap for all this. So it got me thinking about, okay, let's have a look at all the luxury business books out there. So as you can see, I absolutely adore books. So I bought as many as I could, very excited to yay, let me learn. And the books were very well written by professors of luxury, you know, very academic, beautifully referenced. But I'm thinking there's not a lot I can take out of this on a practical level. And that made me realize that maybe there's a gap in the market for a fairly simple, basic book about how to set up a luxury brand. And I kind of thought to myself, what kind of book the kind of book I would have loved to read 20 years ago when I was starting out, although I didn't know I was serving the luxury market. But if I knew that, okay, your path is a luxury market, what kind of book would I want? So that prompted me to write the book. And again, I decided to do things my own way because I'd already written a book about cakes in 2016 that did really well. So I did a limited print run. So you can't get a hard copy, but you can have the ebook. So with this one, there were a couple of things that stood out to me. Number one, I'd never written a business book before. The cake book was easy because I know recipes, I know photos and, pretty photos that they did a lot of heavy lifting in that book. But this one, there's no photos, there's nowhere to hide. It's got to be a business book that is credible with business people and practical to business people, as well as credible to the luxury industry. Because, luxury industry, the people there are a bit, we're a bit snobby and for lack of a better word. And everyone talks highfalutin language. But I'm like, as a business owner, there's a part of my brain going, I want something that will tell me, do this, do this, do this. So that's why I wrote the book. And I only have 5 chapters, although the book's about 300 pages. And in my mind, I divided the book into 3 major parts. So the first part is about you as a person, your mindset. I also do an archetype of the different types of luxury brand owners. And that's because everything starts with us. When you think of people like Coco Chanel, who grew up in an orphanage, or Louis Vuitton, who was so poor, he walked to Paris barefoot, or Gucci, who was a porter at the Savoy Hotel in London, they didn't come from wealth, and yet they created luxury brands. So that was my perspective, you as a person. When I did my archetype, I fell into 2. I'm an artisan and I'm a visionary. So I'm no use in business really, because as an artist, all I want to do is create. So I'll spend all my money just creating, buying the best ingredients and experimenting without checking the bottom line. And as a visionary, I'm always thinking, where are we going? What can we do better? And without even thinking about, okay, where am I getting my clients from? So I need people around me. I need a good business manager. I need a great accountant that is used to working with creatives. And I need a great marketing person. So I did that in the book. So each archetype, I tell you what you need around you. So that's part 1. Part 2 is where we talk about the actual nitty-gritty of a luxury brand, the 5 things you need in place. Imagine a table, 4 legs, and then there's a center pole running through the table, and that's a storytelling, because everyone talks about storytelling. But what is it? What does it mean? So I broke down storytelling into the different the things you need to put in place. Okay, think about your life, blah, 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 blah. And then I talk about things like, one of the pillars is perception. And how do you get that emotional resonance? Because you can create expensive stuff, but if it doesn't resonate, nobody's going to buy it. So I talk about the 5, so that's part 2, the 5 pillars of a luxury brand. And then part 3, which is the bit that many people rush to, and I don't mind because every chapter is standalone. Part 3 is the luxury client, the 8 different archetypes of luxury client. It's more than old money, new money. And I think old money, new money is a bit insulting and reductive and lazy, to be honest. There are 8 different types and I break them down. I even talk about, at the end of that particular chapter, I even talk about the different cultures and how to cater to different cultures from my experience, because I worked with clients from almost every every continent. So, so that for me, was what the book was about.
I want to ask you in just a second some tactical things about luxury clients, because I think that's what I teased about in the beginning, and I also think it's what people are interested in. But I understand there is this really important piece of like self-discovery in the beginning that's important. Like you can't just say, I want to do $100,000 weddings or $1 million weddings and above, and then just boom, you're there. Take us through some of the steps. Like if someone's listening to this right now and they say, I want to be known in the luxury space, whether it's a venue, whether it's a planner, but they just want to work with those clients, photographer, etc. They want to work with those higher net worth clients. What are some of the general steps? Like, what does the path look like to go from no luxury clients to luxury clientele and be known for that in your brand?
Okay, so we're going to go through, this is going to be a quick whatever. First thing I would say is get the book, because I go into a lot more depth, but let's start with, I want to get clients. The first thing I would say is you have a venue and you want to make sure that those clients are coming to your venue. I want to ask you your why. Why your venue? Of all the venues in the world, why has it got to be yours? What is it that you offer? And a lot of people will say, oh, mine's different, blah, blah, blah. And you find that at the end of the day, because I always say you need to have a good product. It doesn't have to be the best, but it's got to be good. And everyone's definition of good is sometimes really, really mediocre, not great. So you have this venue, you want to get high-end clients. In a nutshell, I would first of all say imagery. What kind of imagery are you putting out there for your venue? How convenient is your venue to get to? If it's in the wrong postcode, unless you have a compelling reason to get people there, they will not go if it's not the right postcode. But if it's not the right postcode, you can still mitigate against that. You can make that postcode cool. There are things you can do, tactical, practical things you can do to make the postcode cool. Then you need to look at the kind of caliber of vendors that you work with. What are vendors putting out? So if I deliver a cake to your vendor, for example, and to your venue, for example, what kind of images as one of your suppliers, what am I putting out there? So if you don't even have the right kind of suppliers, I know venues that they've had to beg, borrow, steal these suppliers just so the suppliers can visit the venues. If you want the right planners at your venues, you need to woo them, wine, dine them, but it's not enough for you to give bog standard stuff. You really need to think about the customer journey. So right from because when people come to your venue, they come from somewhere. So did they find you through Google? Was it word of mouth, et cetera, et cetera? You need to know all that. You need the right people to be talking about your venue. You need to do something that will catch the imagination of the industry. So, for example, one of the things I've organized for a venue, and it's on record, it's online. This particular venue was well known in its day, and then people kind of forgot all about it. So it needed a resurgence. And then what I did was I got an incredible florist from outside the country to hold her masterclass in that venue. So the venue was transformed, and then we got a ton of, so what we did was all those images, it's not enough to do an event. It's the PR after the event. So that PR, so what you do, so the invitation list, for example, it wasn't just planners. We had planners, we had influencers, we had press, good press. And then what we did was created a hashtag, got them talking about we gave a few of the influencers and press. They had a sneak peek before the event, so they were able to tweet it and because even amongst them, you need to create competition and jealousy for who gets the exclusive. So we did that as well. And then tweeted all the images, we did Instagram lives on the night, blah, blah, blah. And then for weeks after, we hustled getting bloggers, bloggers in wedding venues, even all the suppliers. We had an agreement. You can only show certain images because in luxury, those images, a wrong image can really, really, and then we looked at basics. Using the wrong linen using the wrong crockery, and because everything is luxury is in the details. So it's not enough to do a swan napkin or whatever it is people do. You need to look at things like that. The quality of the chairs, the quality of the this, of the that, of the other, because you're trying to give people an experience. And sometimes people will tell me, oh, our chef is amazing. And you taste the food and it's like, I'm so sorry, it's mediocre. So even if you have mediocre food and you can't afford to fire the chef, another thing you can do is branding. So, for example, the rest of the food in the courses can be mediocre, but the last course, the dessert, which is the one that people photograph the most, make sure you invest in the dessert because that's the last impression of the meal that people are going to have. You can have your branding on the dessert. So there are things that we did. As you can tell, I was really a lot of the mastermind behind this because I got the right planner involved in organizing this event, and she got the right suppliers. Then there was creatives as well. There was a lot that was done. So yeah. So I mean, I can go on and on and on, but that is a rough potted, masterclass behind trying to get noticed and trying to make sure that you get the right people coming to you. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is pricing. Do not price too low because a lot of venues sometimes price too low or they're pricing per head or whatever. Luxury clients sometimes don't want to know all those details. Some do, it depends on again, I say in the book, some people want to know to the last penny. Some people don't care. So depending on which clients you're aiming for, you position your venue accordingly and make sure your pricing is spot on. And you don't try to, when people talk about overcoming objections, with luxury clients, I never overcome any objections. My pricing is my pricing. And if they have to think about it, withdraw, give them the space and the silence to think about it.
I am hearing a reoccurring theme throughout this whole thing, and that is the details matter. Because I'm hearing that you were focused on the details from the beginning part, making sure that you had the right planners and the right, vendors, photographers, press, etc., to an execution all the way through to the end. You weren't throwing this incredible event and then not doing anything after. You were getting blogs written about it and you were doing promotions after, and you were taking it kind of all the way through till the end. And I think, how important in the luxury market are the details? Like, is that where this market really takes shape?
Oh, it's the details. Even things like, and I know it sounds small and petty, say if you have glass doors and people come in and there are prints, fingerprints on the glass doors, even that, because the human brain and the human eye, we're taking in details, but we might not be consciously doing so, but subconsciously, we're thinking, is this luxury, not luxury? So, but some venues sit in the gray area where people are not sure if they're luxury or not. This is where you then need an incredible creative team that can take that venue. And a venue can be a white box, but it's what you do with the white box. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's about how you show the possibilities of a venue. Even when I did my style shoots, for example, because I was so detail orientated, I would think, okay, for me, the first thing I thought about when I was doing pulling a style shoot together was the light. I need light because I need somewhere really well lit, fairly plain, so that when I bring in the team, the props, the whole thing, whatever I'm trying to showcase will sing. That's very important. So the light, which means the photographer. So I'm thinking in my head, how does this photographer work? Because different photographers have different processes. And again, some of them are so emotional, they'll give you a different result if they're not happy. So you need to keep your photographer very happy. Because again, those images, they're going to determine who's going to be attracted to your venue. So for me, that's why my book is a lot practical, because it's not just about fancy words or whatever. I tell you the kind of photography, the different types of photography that work, because there's product photography and there's lifestyle photography. So you need a balance of both. But I find that a lot of venues, they just, the inside of the venue is quite plain and they photograph that. It's like staging even $1 million properties. If they're not staged, they're 60% less likely to sell than property that is staged. But then the staging has got to be the right staging for the property.
Yeah. The imagery, I'm so glad you touched on that. The imagery, and especially in the venue space, when you're selling the venue, you're not selling the rings, you're not selling the veil, you're not selling the details of the flowers, you're selling the space. And if part of your offering is catering and bar and some of those things, then of course in the marketing you need to have that. But I feel so often as venues, it's very easy to get complacent. I don't want to say lazy, but kind of like you're using the photographers who are coming to photograph the couple's weddings, which is great. And we do that. But the problem is if it stops there, you're basically just getting details of their weddings, and that was limited to their budget. And so you might be routinely receiving images from a $20,000 or a $30,000 wedding. And if your goal is to do a $80,000 or $100,000 wedding, you can't be routinely showing those images because you are getting typecast as that type of venue.
I mean, you've said it perfectly. So if you want those $100,000 or $1 million couples, you need to do style shoots that reflect that. You need to find these incredible florists, incentivize them. I don't care how you do it, that can create something incredibly amazing for you, and shows the possibilities. And another thing that venues need to be aware of is showcasing spaces in the venues that people can use for Instagram-worthy moments. You need to demonstrate that as well. So you're getting these, because whether we like it or not, the age getting married, 60-70% would be millennials, Gen Zs, etc. So you need to be able to say, okay, this particular area, you need to look at things from their eyes and say, you can have your Instagram moment, your viral moment, whatever, in this particular space. So those are the kinds of things that people are looking for from venues that make people, that transport people. If there's a part of your venue that is similar to, say, a place in Italy or whatever, you need to showcase that. You need to highlight that. So it's about looking at your venue differently and even doing a poll and asking people, would you rather this area or that area? And you're getting feedback in real time, and you're using that to help you inform. And so when you have a show through at your venue, you can start suggesting, because that's another thing. When you go to venues, I think what really drives me nuts is they say, we seat 140 and we can have blah, 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 blah. They just give you the technical details. They don't paint a picture of the romance of the venue. So when you arrive, we will greet you with this and we will do this, or even do a semi walkthrough of what could be, do a little, because if you think about it, when you think of luxury brands, they do a lot of events, and I mean a lot. And most of them tend to be either dinners. They do these intimate dinners because they know that the more intimate you are with people around you, the same people, in your social level or whatever, or your favorite influencer, your favorite celebrity at the end of the table, they know you are going to be more emotionally committed to their brand. So they do a lot. Even when they do couture shows or fashion shows, they only bring in a select people. They make a spectacle for clothes that they know maybe not 1% of the population can afford. They get most of their money from the lipsticks and perfumes and makeup. That's what gives them the bulk of their money. So venues need to think it like that as well. How can we make our venue seem otherworldly and really beautiful and romantic or whatever, so that will attract, because automatically people go, oh my God, that's $100,000 venue. So that for me, but another shortcut is if you can get featured in an incredible film, that brings people running as well. So being featured in a film, that works for many people on Netflix. So yeah.
I was going to ask about that, the kind of the impact of media, because obviously you've been published many, many times in just such a wide variety of magazines and articles, Brides, Martha Stewart, like you've said, Elle, right, as well. So many.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question is, what like real practical impact have you seen that have? Is it actually the fact that you got published, or is it that you use the fact that you got published later on to kind of showcase that you're the type of brand that gets that media attention?
Oh, that's an amazing question. And I think it's both. So number one, the fact that you got published, because not everyone gets published, but when it comes to being published, I would say, yes, if you get print is great, but print is vanity. Online is where the metrics lie. So it's about getting on. Right now, I would always go for online over print. Print is vanity because once you're printed in a magazine once, it goes away. That's it. But once you're online, and if they link to your website, that can bring tremendous SEO your way. So as a venue, what you want to be doing is encouraging as many people as possible to link to your venue, to have your venue linked on their website. So if they do a blog post about you or whatever it is they do about you, make sure they link to your website. So media is absolutely crucial, but you need to be in the right media. You need to be in the media that kind of the elevated media, as I call it. However, you don't want to be, so for example, some people will buy an advert where they are one of like 10,000 vendors being featured that month and say, oh, I've been published by Vogue. No, you haven't. That is an advert. A proper feature is a lot more difficult to come by. So my strong suggestion, and I say it in the book as well, look for journalists that publish luxury or talk about high-end people or whatever. Find them on LinkedIn, or better still, find them on Twitter. Follow them like mad. On Twitter, there was something called hashtag journo request. I follow that hashtag like mad because all sorts of journalists will do a shout out. I am looking for blah, 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 blah. Now, even if you don't do that, it could be used for somebody else. So I follow that hashtag, and some journalists they write for the high-end publications, and they know a lot of high-end people. So they're very good people to be friends with. So again, I put a lot in the book because I want it to be as practical as possible. Because a lot of people, they actually will go directly to the publication. And, they go directly to the publication. But if you go to the publication and speak to the editor, your email is going to be ignored because the editor is not responsible. They sign off the features. So what you need is a feature editor or the features assistant or the researcher. So you need to work your way. You need to find, the food chain, work your way and be friends with as many of them as possible. So when they think, oh, we need to feature XYZ, they think of you. And be really, really good friends with photographers. I am begging you. Photographers, and also not just any photographer, but for photographers that hustle. There are certain photographers I use for my shoots, and I know that as soon as I use this person for my shoot, I know she's going to get me into Japan Vogue. I know she's going to get me into, because she has the contacts and she hustles like crazy. So again, the power of the right collaboration to get you in the places you want to get to.
Elizabeth, this is so powerful. There's so many nuggets in here for people. And obviously we're speaking in a general way because the industry as a whole, there's so much value to be taken from here, right? If you're a planner, apply everything you're hearing to, X, Y, and Z. On the venue side though, the tactical stuff has been super helpful. Like even just like the SEO linking, getting the online publications, the print press. I remember we were once published in a print article and it was very cool to see the magazine, the feature, wow, modern luxury, so nice. And there's a vanity piece there, but it really didn't do anything for us. Like, I don't even know where it is now. Like maybe it's framed somewhere or whatever, right? But it doesn't do anything for us. But if we had that online article and it was linking back to our website,
yeah,
paying for years and years down the line. So just very tactical stuff. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of that. And I know there's so much more about luxury clientele that we couldn't even cover, but that's why your book is here, right?
Exactly. So the book is called The Luxpreneur. So again, on Amazon, get a copy. It's really good reading because I don't gatekeep anything. And as I said, it's in 3 parts. You can go straight to the part you like. And if you then want, you can read much more. But I would suggest you just read everything and, let me know. And I'd love to know what people think.
Beautiful. Well, and if people do have feedback, questions, things like that, I mean, obviously they can review it on Amazon, but if they wanted to reach out to you specifically and talk, ask about the coaching that you do or the speaking or anything else like that, what's the best place to reach you?
The best place is LinkedIn right now. LinkedIn is I've rediscovered LinkedIn over the last few years. And also on LinkedIn every day, I do a post around luxury and more importantly, how we can apply some of the things I'm reporting on in our businesses. So yesterday, it was all about Formula One, collaborating with LVMH and how you can do something similar even if you have no money. So those are some of the things I write about because again, these collaborations that the big brands do, they've got billions of money, billions of dollars or whatever. We haven't got the same, but I try to find a way around what we can do that is similar.
Totally. I love it. And little inspiration pieces like that, you can copy first, just like you were saying in the very beginning, you can copy and then develop your own style, what works for you and your specific niche of our industry. That makes a lot of sense. Elizabeth, thank you for coming on today. This has been so much fun and I'm excited for people to hear it. It'll really help people's businesses.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and an honor being here today. And thank you for the opportunity again and again. I'm always grateful. And thank you.
Yeah, you got it. And for everyone watching and listening, we will have links to everything in the description. So check out Elizabeth's book. And I'm excited to hear what you think of this podcast. It's something that the luxury market is very elusive for many people, but it's really neat to have someone like you, Elizabeth, who's broken it down. So, all right. We'll see you all in the next episode.
Pardon the interruption, I wanted to take a moment and share with you about WEVA. WEVA stands for Wedding and Event Venue Association, and it is a professional association custom built for venue owners and operators. We felt like there was a lack of resources, community, education, and networking available specifically for our industry, and so we recently started this association and it's been growing by the day. We would love to extend an invite to you, so please click the link in the description or wherever you're watching this video, and we would love to welcome you into the community.